In this video, we're going to talk about an excellent way to add an extra layer of security to your online accounts, called two-factor authentication. It's a simple method, but extremely effective at keeping your accounts protected, and you'll be glad you enabled it. Imagine you want to log into one of your accounts. You enter your username and password, right? This is known as a single authentication factor, because you're using only one secret element, which is your password, to prove that you are really you. You might think you're using two elements, a username and a password, but in reality, the only secret is the password, since your username is usually public or easy to guess. For example, your email address is often your username, and that's information many people already know. So in practice, you're relying on just one secret, your password. But what would happen if your password fell into the wrong hands? Exactly. If someone discovers it, they can access your account without any obstacle, because the password is the only security barrier. That's why a very effective solution was created, adding one or more additional layers of security to your accounts. These additional layers are what we call authentication factors. So what are authentication factors? It's actually quite simple. They are different mechanisms used to verify a user's identity. In other words, they are the ways to confirm that a person really is who they claim to be. As we mentioned earlier, one authentication factor can be a password. Another could be a code you receive on your mobile phone. It could also be your fingerprint, among others. To increase security, we must combine at least two of these factors. For example, in addition to entering your password, the system could send a code to your smartphone, and only after entering that code would you be allowed to log in. So even if an attacker discovers your password, he still won't be able to access your account because he don't have your phone and can't know the code sent by the system. Similarly, even if an attacker steals your phone, he won't be able to log in because he don't know your password. In other words, the two factors complement each other to provide stronger security. As explained in the previous example, when we combine two factors during the login process, this is called two-factor authentication, also known as two-step authentication, or simply 2FA. If we combine two or more factors, we call it multi-factor authentication, or MFA. In other words, 2FA is a type of MFA. 2FA uses exactly two factors, while MFA can use two or more authentication factors. Although using more authentication factors increases security even further, in most cases, two-factor authentication is sufficient to provide an adequate level of security and protect your online accounts. Now, going a little deeper into technical knowledge, we can say that there are four types of authentication factors: something the person knows, something the person has, something the person is, and something the person does. It's also important to note that many experts group the last two into a single category known as biometric factors. Let's now look at how each of these authentication factors works. The first factor is something the person knows. This consists of a secret that only you and the system you're accessing know. A classic example is the password you use to access your email account. Another example is the PIN you use to unlock your phone or withdraw money from an ATM. It could also be the pattern you use to unlock your smartphone. This factor is the most common in computer systems because it's easy to implement and doesn't require special devices or complex algorithms. The second authentication factor is based on something the person has. This means the user must possess a physical object that contains unique information used to verify their identity. A common example is the code sent to your mobile phone. Some people may think this code belongs to the something you know category, since it's a secret number. However, that's not the case, because the user doesn't know this code in advance, nor is it a permanently shared secret. It's a one-time code generated at the moment, whose only purpose is to verify that the user has the phone associated with the account. This one-time code can be received via SMS text message, messaging apps like WhatsApp, or generated by specialized applications such as Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, which have become very popular. Another example, though less common, is physical OTP devices. These are small devices that generate a temporary code that must be entered on a bank's website to complete financial transactions. Experts consider these devices more secure than codes sent to phones, since phones can be hacked, whereas physical OTP devices are harder to compromise. They don't connect to the internet, and if someone attempts to physically tamper with them, the battery disconnects, and all stored secrets and algorithms are instantly erased. Another example is USB security tokens, which store secret information such as the private key of a digital certificate. In this case, the access to a system is only granted when the token is physically connected to the computer. Finally, we can mention debit and credit cards. These allow you to prove your identity when making payments or withdrawing money from an ATM. In ATM withdrawals, we typically use two authentication factors. You use your debit card, which is something you have, and you also enter your secret PIN, which is something you know, to successfully complete the transaction. This greatly increases security because even if someone steals your card, they won't be able to withdraw money without knowing your PIN. And even if someone discovers your PIN, they won't be able to withdraw money without the card. Both factors work together to provide stronger protection. Today, more and more websites and applications, such as email services, online stores, and digital banking platforms offer two-factor authentication. That's why I strongly recommend enabling two-step verification on all your online accounts. It's one of the simplest and most effective ways to protect your personal information and prevent unauthorized access, even if someone learns your password. Let's look at an example. Suppose you try to log in to your Google account. First, you enter your username and password as usual. Now, if you have two-factor authentication enabled, Google will ask for an authentication code generated by an app on your phone. You can obtain it by selecting the option Get a Verification Code. Once you enter the correct code, that's it. This extra step, using your phone, makes it much harder for someone to access your account even if they obtain your password. Currently, there are many applications that allow you to generate codes for two-factor authentication. Among the most popular are Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator, available on both the Apple App Store and Google Play. These apps work with almost any service that supports two-factor authentication. To enable it, you can follow the instructions provided on each service's official website or simply search for the setup process on Google. Now, there are also authentication factors based on something the person is and something the person does. As mentioned earlier, many experts group both under the biometric factor, since they aim to identify a specific individual based on unique characteristics. The difference between these two factors is that something the person is relies on physical traits, such as fingerprints, iris or retina scans, or facial recognition. On the other hand, something the person does is based on behavioral patterns that distinguish each person, such as voice tone and pitch, walking style, or typing behavior. Even though the something the person does factor is an interesting alternative for user authentication, its practical use is extremely limited. This is because its implementation is complex and requires training models capable of learning and recognizing individual user behaviors. Additionally, its accuracy is generally lower compared to methods based on something the person is. In contrast, physical biometric factors, such as fingerprints and facial recognition, have become increasingly common in everyday systems. Today, many people use these mechanisms to access their smartphones or digital services quickly and securely. In summary, in this video, we saw the importance of implementing multi-factor authentication as an effective way to protect your online accounts. By combining different types of factors, such as something you know, something you have, or something you are, you add an extra layer of security that makes unauthorized access extremely difficult, even if someone manages to obtain your password. Enabling two-factor authentication is quick, free, and can save you from many headaches, so don't put it off. Review your accounts, enable two-factor authentication, and keep your personal information much more secure. Remember, your digital security depends on you. A small step taken today can protect you from major security breaches tomorrow.